I'm very glad that the government has put up this motion to call for setting up of a select committee on this deliberate online falsehood. I applaud the government for taking this approach because this is a very important issue affecting every Singaporean, young and old, and hence, a call for extensive and in-depth discussions and deliberation is most important. We all know that fake news is not anything new. It has been around since olden times and even now in present days. It's been used by both states and non-states players to profit, to manipulate, to divide, and to conquer. Now in 2017, Minister Shanmugam, in replying to members of the House, identified 3 situations of such things, and I would quote him. First, genuine feedback. It could be in error where the person could have made a mistake but genuine, well-intentioned feedback or complaints because there is a difference of viewpoints. Allegation based on an honest belief in certain facts. That is one category. That is understandable. Generally, there should be no consequences for that. The second category, where the complaint is justified, feedback is justified, and we must take action. But the third category is what the member is focused on, which is false, deliberate, malicious allegations. We are not talking about errors. We are talking about deliberate falsehoods, malice. And so, I will look forward to the Select Committee to look especially into this third category that the Minister has mentioned and examine deeply the consequences of this falsehood. In the UK, there was a call for submission for the understanding of fake news by the British Parliament. And on the website, you can see that the Parliament actually wants the British public to define what is fake news. And the second thing which I thought is really important is, I quote, where does biased but legitimate commentary shade into propaganda and lies? I think this second point is very important for the Select Committee to look at, because this government has been advocating for more active citizenry, hoping that Singaporeans will be more involved in discourse and discussions. We have seen more Singaporeans speaking up, and of course, the social media has provided that platform for them to express their views. We do not want a heavy-handed approach that will root out constructive, though at times disagreeable voices. Hence, I hope that the Select Committee will consider if there are to be new legislation against deliberate online falsehood, that it needs to balance the interests of protecting national security and preserving public order with the interest of one, enabling individuals to have meaningful discussion on issues of concern, including government policies, without fear of having action taken against them. And 2, enabling the media, both professional and citizen journalists, to report on such issues of concern. Where the media is concerned, for example, should there be a responsible journalism defense? Thus, if a media outlet acts responsibly before publishing a story, for example, by conducting inquiries into whether an incident did in fact happen or by approaching the authorities for comment, should it be free from liabilities even if it later turns out that the stories contain some inaccuracies? Also provided that the media has made such inquiries, if it is merely reporting what someone else says without endorsing what has been said, should it be free from liability? However, I would urge the Select Committee to look at what our present law's provisions have as a starting point. Such laws include the Broadcasting Case License Notifications, or the Section 45 of the Telecommunication Act, and specific laws such as the Administration of Justice Protection Act, the Protection from Harassment Act, the Sedition Act, and the Tort of Defamation. Well, in the Green Paper, which mentioned, and just now Minister Yaacob has mentioned about the case of the TRS incident, the relevant authorities have moved swiftly and under the existing law dealt with that issue. And in fact, based on what I've observed, that very quickly, that piece of falsehood was quashed. And public understood and knew and did not circulate it anymore. I think this demonstrates that our current existing laws and provision have been effective. I think based on this, we should start our discussion on whether we need new legislation. I'm not saying that these acts are perfect and do not require review. Indeed, some of these laws give very broad powers to the authorities, and it may be that they should themselves be reviewed, but to ensure that the interests of individuals that I've mentioned previously above are properly recognized. But one of the concerns about online platforms is that news would spread so quickly. So when there is a falsehood being put out, how do we respond as swiftly? And to act swiftly and to respond swiftly, we just cannot depend only on law enforcers. And no matter how tough the law is, any person with intention to sabotage with fake news or falsehood would still do it for profit or for malice. Hence, the responsibility of citizens becomes important. To stop the spreading of news, it needs the citizen to be vigilant, to take up responsibility, but not to be vigilante. Hence, this age of social media, the people's responsibility then must include the ability to discern and make up their mind what news are dubious and what are falsehood. Media literacy is important and should be inculcated in all levels of society, in schools, in community setups, in workplaces, and even at home. Any good literacy programs must be taught critically so that those who are learning it will learn how to think critically. So I hope the Select Committee will look at how to further our media literacy outreach, and not just going to schools, but to workplaces, community, and grassroots sites. But I also think that this is a wonderful opportunity for everyone to start thinking about these issues and to ride on the work of the Select Committee that will gain a lot of public attention, that the government should consider, at the same time, put up sustainable engagement programs on media literacies at all of these sites that I've just mentioned. As the world becomes more complex, no one person or institution can claim to hold truth, to have all information. Hence, everyone must contribute to providing information, to help to discover truth, and to fact-check. Fake news preys on the confirmation biasness of its readers. And so, as it travels virus very quickly, unsuspecting public will be taken in very quickly. So to help public learn to discern truth, facts, and opinions from lies and falsehoods, it is important that there's a high level of transparency, of information flowing, especially from authority. The earlier when these informations are being shared without prejudicing justice or national security concerns, that would help people to know and to be able to clear the air. I also hope that the Select Committee would also look at multiple independent fact-checking bodies that would allow public to fact-check, cross-reference, so that they can make decisions themselves. I would also like to ask the Select Committee, when calling out for public engagement, again to allow more time for consultations. A recent incident was the Film Act, the draft of the Film Act, where we had only 9 days to make that, submission, and we had to appeal for another 2 more weeks of that submission. And I hope that this would not happen. But at the same time, I wonder, would the Select Committee consider, because this is an issue of such a broad consensus, that there may be disagreement within the Select Committee in terms of what to do, that there should be provision for minority reports in the Select Committee report. And finally, Rebecca Solnit, in her book, Hope in the Darkness, talks about how ordinary people that appear in superhero movies, produced by Hollywood, are always portrayed to be passive, clueless, cowardly, and helpless. Because without this clueless public, the superheroes cannot perform his task. But in real life, we realize that people are not that clueless. And I think in the fighting of this online falsehood, we need all people to be responsible. The people, the government, the media, the civil society. Because we really cannot wait for superheroes in those crisis moments. Thank you.